talk to Gage.
And hello everyone, welcome back to another video here on N-Gage. So today we are going to be talking about my experience with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. I've played this game for over 90 hours that I have experienced across 2 playthroughs. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So let's just get right into it.
Do you wish to change it? Huh? The future.
So I have played Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition twice now. Originally on my first playthrough, I gotta be honest, I did not like Xenoblade that much. I mean, I did, but after the ending of the game, I just did not vibe with it much. The things that kind of held it back, in my opinion, was the ending, which we're gonna talk about that later, more in depth, but the ending itself just annoyed me, and there was a lot of things that were confusing and I felt were just bad writing. I didn't like how the heart-to-hearts mechanic was cumbersome to find and to get through them, even though they were cool ideas, cool mechanics. It's like support logs from Fire Emblem, but they're just not easy to interact with, and I didn't really like that either. And then another thing I didn't like was the battles were just sometimes really chaotic, and that made it really difficult. If there was multiple enemies, it just kind of became not really my favorite, kind of became annoying to play. So I wasn't a fan of that sometimes. Like the combat in and of itself, like I had, fun with it for sure, but it just felt like it was a lot of just like spamming and button mashing different, arts. But that was just me personally at the time. I finished the game, put it down, and doubted that I would ever play it again, but here we are. Clearly, I have some more thoughts on it. I can't remember exactly what it was that got me to play the game again and want to get back into the series, but I think it was probably a Player Essence video talking about Xenoblade on his channel, because I know he is a huge fan of Xenoblade. But this brings us to my most recent playthrough. So I ended my playthrough the first time switching to casual mode because I really didn't want to grind or do any side quests at the time, so I just wanted to cheese my way through it and be done. But on my second playthrough, I decided that I would play the whole game in casual mode and just try it out, just see what I thought about it, how it changed the game. Maybe it would improve my experience.
Casual?
We may talk about this a little more later, but I actually did enjoy it more. And I know this might be kind of annoying to some people, but I just felt it was more casual. It was more easy to play. It was an easier experience. And for me in the Xenoblade series, or at least this first game, I was just struggling through it. So, I know it's kind of like lame that, I resorted to going to the easy mode basically, but to me, I just felt like it was still enough of a challenge. So it wasn't like, a walking simulator, but it was just more balanced in my opinion. So I personally recommend it if you're anything like me. Maybe you'll prefer this balancing over the original. But the next thing is the music is absolutely amazing in this game, and even in this series. Really, really good and way underrated by me the first time I played it. I did not remember this music as much as I really should have, because music is top tier and is fantastic. And then the gameplay itself, like I said, is at its core, it's interesting and fun. It's very different from other things I've played. It's not entirely real-time action combat, but it's not entirely turn-based either. It's kind of like a weird middle ground area of sorts, with you using the art system in the game for combat. And it has the potential to be really fun at certain points during your playthrough. So I do like it, but I don't know, just parts of it didn't really sit well with me. Like even on the second playthrough, I sort of felt like it could be better. I felt like it was missing something, and maybe the second and third game kind of fixed this issue, but that was just something I thought of. And another quick thing in terms of the gameplay and the combat is I was a little annoyed how, and this is a small thing, most people aren't gonna like notice this or mention this at all in their reviews, but at the bottom screen, that's where they put the arts. It kind of annoyed me how if an enemy is targeting a specific character, you'll see a red ring under their feet signaling if that's who they're targeting. Well, if all of the arts are listed at the bottom, you have to move the camera to be like really low to the ground so it lifts your character high enough so where you can even see it unless you want to have the camera like super zoomed out. That was a little annoying. I don't really like that a lot, but I noticed that Xenoblade 2 and 3 seem to clear out the bottom of the HUD, so I think that's really cool. I'm glad they at least changed that, but back to Xenoblade 1. The world is absolutely amazing, and I must say that Monolith Soft they're some of the best open world developers on the Switch. Like, I think this is one of the best open world games on the Switch, hands down. I know there's not a ton. I know Breath of the Wild does exist, trust me, that's up there too. I was overall just impressed. The world design is fantastic. The art style, art design is just amazing. And just the concepts of being on two massive titans is just so cool. So now this brings us to the story. I want to talk about the story a little bit. So this is your spoiler warning, your spoiler alert. I'm going to be going through some minor spoilers and some major spoilers, so just maybe if you don't want the game spoiled, it might be better to just click off the video now. Now that that's out of the way, let's dive right into this. So the characters are great, but this game is more plot driven than it is character driven. But that's not to say the characters are bad. Let me make that clear. It's just this game is definitely more in the vein of something like Lord of the Rings, just like a massive kind of story, than it is really focusing on individual characters as much as some other stories in games. But I must say, Shulk is an amazing protagonist. I really like him as the main lead. I find him interesting and different compared to a lot of main characters in JRPG games. So I found him really refreshing and entertaining to watch throughout the story, and I really can't say anything too much to critique his writing as a character or anything quite like that. So Shulk is really, really cool. Something I thought of during my second playthrough was just how big in scope this game's world and story is. It almost feels like I said, a Lord of the Rings level of world building, just with how much they thought out this world and just how deep and wide its world really goes. I personally do find myself preferring character-driven stories as it gives me an easier way to immerse myself into a story. But that is not to say the characters are bad, like I said, because they really are great. And it's just that what is going on in this game's plot is bigger than any one of these characters or even all of them together. It's so massive in scope, and I think that's why it feels this way. It feels more plot driven. But like I said, I pretty much hated the ending of this game the first time around. I found the twists at the end of the story to be pretty dumb and confusing, so it really took me out of the story. But how about my second playthrough? Well, I can't say I hated it like I did before, but I don't know. I still find some things about this game's final few chapters that I just don't jive with. I tried my absolute best to like it and follow what was happening and understand it. I mean, I understood what was happening this time a little bit better, but I just don't find it as interesting as it maybe could have been. For example, I believe Dixon is straight up a bad character and is extremely boring. At the end of the game, he explains that his reason for doing what he is doing is because, and I quote, because Zanza said,
Zanza just tells me where to fight and I fight. And that's how I like it.
Is that your reason?
It's the only reason.
That's so boring. Like, that's the most basic thing you could have had him say. Oh gosh, you gotta be kidding me. So, picture this. Wouldn't it have been so much more interesting if Dixon hesitated harming Shulk? Like, maybe he had a moment where like he didn't want to do that due to their father and son like relationship. Maybe even at the beginning of the game, they should have really played up their bond, because I did not picture them as father and son, or like that was what the game was trying to say, because the game really didn't say that like at all. They have like a brief moment at the beginning of the game where it's a one-on-one. They're hanging out in the lab, but that's kind of it. And it really wasn't that much. They should have really built that up, or at least planted that seed of thought into our heads before all of this happened, because it just felt so random and weird. So I really hated that in him, and that was just, not something I was a fan of. I would really just preferred if they implemented some of these other ideas and just fleshed it out a bit more, instead of just throwing this random twist at the end. And I thought the whole Zanza thing at the first playthrough was really dumb and confusing, but the second playthrough, I actually do get it. It kind of makes sense. I see what was happening a little better. Still a little convoluted and sort of random at the very end of the game, but I don't know. I don't really hate it as much as I did the first time. I don't want to discount everything else in the game just because I don't like the ending few chapters. I found a lot to admire about this game. I found a whole lot to admire and that I enjoyed, especially the second time through. Even so, I've decided to dive into the sequel. I've decided after playing this game again that I want to see where the series goes. I want to see what happens, and I want to see how they developed this game. The combat and its world building and the characters. So that's why I decided I'm gonna play through Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And who knows, maybe I'll make a video on that game as well whenever I do finish it. But these are just some of my overall thoughts on this game after finishing it. I finished it just the other day, and I wanted to sit down here and record a video for you all and just share some of my brief thoughts on it. What? That's where I'll digress for now. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. If you didn't, thank you for watching this long, and don't forget to engage that subscribe button down below, and I will see you all in the next video. God bless.
I wish I knew.